Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hi everybody.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hello.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
We got a third one.
I'm Robert Evans.
Yeah!
Yeah!
And we just watched the Pizzagate Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Starring Militia Seth Rogen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Militia
starring
Rogen.
Militia Seth Rogen.
Lizard Illuminati. Toots Pizza out of Austin, Texas.
Yet no one's looking into it. No FBI, no ATF, no one. The government's hiding something.
Hey, I think you should leave your camera behind. It looks suspicious.
If we even live to see this footage, it'll be bigger than you or me.
I guess we'll get into spoilers for that, but his parentage is a fun detail. The
Oh,
story
yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
drops on you.
Yeah. First of all,
Yeah.
Robert, I just want to
They
thank
just
you
lob
for...
that shit at you like a cinder block. Sorry, Dave.
No, I was just thanking our guest for being on. Robert, you told us about this film.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about this film.
It's like normally you guys have producers who back the Patreon to do a thing, but I basically robbed you of a podcast. Like this is like an armed podcast robbery.
Yeah,
forced you
kinda.
to watch the Pizzagate Massacre.
Well, here's the thing. This is
It's
going
like
up.
it's like an armed donation.
Yeah.
It's
An
like if
armed
you kicked in
donation.
the door
Well,
I got an idea.
the
I
thrift
think-
store and made us take a couch.
We're putting this up on like Monday, and honestly, this weekend nothing's really coming out.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh shit. Well, this works.
I was like right after Thanksgiving, just kind of like fucking around, watching with a friend, and turned on like Amazon, and for whatever reason, like this was the first movie it suggested to me, which I'm sure is because of all of the microphones everywhere.
I was about to say.
I was going to say, I think I could think of a few reasons why Amazon would suggest this movie.
And
for you.
honestly, one of the things that makes me happy about this is that I decided to watch it, because with a title like The Pizzagate Massacre, 99% of movies that would have a title like that, I would not want to watch, right? They would not be any good.
I would
That
have
was my
gone
first instinct,
right
too.
past this for the rest of my life had
Yeah.
you not stopped and said, "Hey, we should watch this."
I decided to watch it because the poster fucking owns.
Yes.
It is a great, like, classic grindhouse horror poster. It's fucking awesome.
It is pretty wacky.
Yeah, it has like this grindhouse theme throughout, which was
Yeah.
very weird, but it worked
Well, this-
fine.
The directors worked with Robert Rodriguez. I don't know, like, in what, like, how closely, but, like, has worked on Robert Rodriguez. His IMDb, some of the things he's credited for, like, Robert Rodriguez films.
That makes sense because Troublemaker Studios is in Austin.
So this guy, like, this is a dude who has not directed a film before, but has been like, you know, done like camera shit and whatnot, and worked on a number of films. And clearly knows what he's doing.
Right.
And
This is John Valley, by the way.
John
who-
Valley.
He's in the movie. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
he is.
sure he's the
did not
main
have enough
villain.
money for enough characters.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, maybe he's the villain. I don't know.
I don't know. I thought.
Yeah.
Let me look.
But
I was going to
he's-
say, is he Philip? Is he Sidethorn?
Philip. He's Philip. Yeah.
Oh, he is the bad guy.
He is
Oh,
Sidethorn. Okay.
Yeah, he's amazing in this. Then he's actually he's a perfectly adequate actor too.
Yeah.
But it's an ultra low budget film. It's like a 5-figure movie. I would be shocked if this was much over 50,000, because like really a couple of set rentals are the only thing that I see, because otherwise it's like random parts of the street, a dirt road in the middle of nowhere,
Somebody's
a
house. Yeah.
The big set is which I don't actually think cost them much. So Should we actually, I don't know, you guys do this, I don't. Should we just go over the movie before we get into this?
We might want to go over the movie a little bit first.
It's most people, this movie, it's available for rent on VOD. We watched it via Amazon, as Robert said. But this is, like we said, it's a very new film, so it's entirely possible, well, not possible, it's likely that most people listening to this episode have not seen or even heard of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the director is a transplant to Austin, who Austin had, like, InfoWars is based out of Austin. Austin has a huge conspiracy scene, and Austin is like an hour-ish, 2 hours from Waco, and there's like a big, like, both big militia kind of lunatic scene out there and like a deep conspiracy scene, and this guy kind of made this movie as, I don't know what the right term is. It's really more of an analysis of like how it works. Like, because he really kind of lays out the way that, like, the conspiracy industry sort of functions in Texas in particular.
It's a pretty grim film in terms
bleak.
of that. Yeah, because it's the name, the title makes it seem like, oh, is this like a documentary? What is this?
Or is this some wacky film where, like, I thought it was going to be, it's a film where the premise is Pizzagate's real and our heroes have to stop it.
Right. And I'm very glad it never does that.
It's not what it is. Yeah.
No.
It is satirical, but
yes,
it's not like goofy.
Yeah. It is in elements kind of close to a work of like journalism. There's such a degree of, because the basic plot is that this lady, this young woman who is working for this world's Alex Jones, who is played by a woman who has the same attitude, she's playing she's playing Alex Jones, but with the persona of Dr. Laura almost, which is a fun mix. She's a good character. But
Terry Lee.
Terry Lee
is the character's name. Yeah.
And so one of our main characters is a young journalist who, like, hears her talking about Pizzagate. Like, that this rumors that there's this pizza house in Austin where all the Democratic elites are molesting and eating children. She goes on a big rant about it. This journalist decides to investigate, and she picks this militia nut who, like, pulls a gun on a crowd of protesters. That's our introduction to the other main characters. He, like, pulls a gun on a crowd of unarmed protesters who are protesting, like, Alex Jones.
He's like a dipshit about it. Like, He's a dipshit, but they also, there's some good character stuff in this. They also establish early on, he's, like, very fast on the draw. Like, that's one of the things. He's a dipshit who's extremely competent with guns. Yeah. And he's a very scary character as a result of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's extremely frightening.
That's one of the... Yeah, just real quick, one of the things I appreciated and was honestly very surprised about this movie is, like we were saying, like, with the title, like Pizzagate Massacre and the poster, you were expecting something that's either really, really like a spoof or something that's like satire in the vein of like Adam McKay, where it's going to be really, really preachy to its own echo chamber. But this movie is like surprisingly complex in terms of what it's saying about conspiracy culture.
It reminded me of, did you guys ever see Death of a President?
No.
That was a movie I rolled my eyes at when I first saw it. It's was made in 2006, and it's a fake documentary about the assassination of George Bush. And you think, like, oh, why do we need that? And it turns out to just be this kind of complex look at, like, Islamophobia. The idea is that what happens after the assassination and what happens to the world and so on. So it reminds me of that because it has this, like, it has sort of this promise, this Pizzagate stuff that you're like, crap. Like, oh no, they're gonna try to bank off of this idea. And then when you watch it, you're like, oh, this is actually, it's what you're saying, Tom. It's not some, like, a parody. It's actually pretty complex in how it's depicting the characters and the situation.
And the last, like, their search to try to unravel the real Pizzagate ends with them, a bunch of people getting murdered, right? Yeah. And there's never a hint from the movie that, like, this conspiracy might be real, that, like, there's an actual Pizzagate. It's just a bunch of people getting shot because they're all jumpy and armed and kind of marginal people, like, in kind of weird, like, everything kind of happens. One of the things I love about how this is shot, and it shows that, like, this guy really knows the Austin area, is there's not really shots of like the shots you would expect of going into Waco, going into Austin. You would do this like establishing shot of like the river area probably in Waco, or of like downtown Austin, 6th Street. That's generally how like you introduce, especially a city like Austin that's a famous city. You put that in a movie, you're going to see the famous Austin things. Everything you see from Austin and Waco is like strip malls and like houses kind of on the edge of town and like...
right. The establishing shot we get of Austin is way, way outside of Austin on like an off-ramp. And that's all we get.
Yeah, like the highways. Like,
yeah.
And it's a really like lived-in view of Austin. It's like the shit you actually see if you live in Austin. It's like the little... like the stores and like kind of neighborhoods where everything's a little bit run down and the streets are cracked and like you're not, it's a very, like all of these people are on the margins and all of these people are like, the only thing that they have in common is they all have guns. Like almost everyone we meet in this movie is packing.
Yeah.
Which is also very Texas. They don't make a big deal about it, but like a huge chunk of the plot is that all these people are on edge and armed. And so people keep dying and it's good. It's a good movie. Yeah.
It's definitely done in a like it has to sort of walk that line between like it's silly.
Yeah.
There's silly characters, but it is very dark. And I think they do a pretty damn good job at it.
Yeah.
The only thing that was like what a weird scene was the highwayman. the dude who pretends to be that was the only part that was like, what a weird way of doing that. I get why it exists in the movie. I'm just curious about that man's life. The man who pretends to old in the middle of the road and
pretends to be old with a walker on a dirt road.
Yeah. I'm not saying in the world of this movie, it's not like it wasn't believable.
It's a honeypot, Dave. It's a classic honeypot.
Yeah,
it's a classic
honeypot.
honeypot.
Old man honeypot.
The old man honeypot. Yeah.
Wish you could. Oh, sorry.
No, I mean it's the old man honeypot, like who pulls a gun on our protagonist and then gets murked, because the thing that is established about our protagonist is that he only ever shoots people when they're trying to shoot him, but he shoots every single person who tries to shoot him. Like,
and via that paintball training thing we see up front, we learn that not only that, but he's also like good. Like he's good. This is a thing he's genuinely good at.
Big foreshadowing there. Yeah.
He's and again, there's this weird mix of wacky because the movie just drops on you, like that he's David Koresh's son. He is the son of the Branch Davidian leader.
Yeah, it was amazing.
He never really knew him because they all got murdered, but it like fucked him up and shit.
Yeah. They do a lot of drops like that later when he has to take off his shirt. It's just like, oh shit.
He's got the
fucking... what's key is you use the term protagonist and not hero, and that's important for people to understand.
But he's also not. Sorry.
I think we're gonna say the same thing. He's not a two-dimensional character.
No, he's very. Because when we meet him, he's going along to investigate this thing, but he's also like really angry at the Alex Jones lady. He's like disillusioned and kind of getting out of the we don't know if he's entirely getting out of conspiracy, but he's getting out of the chunk of the conspiracy culture that he'd been in. He has recognized that this Alex Jones lady is like conning him and has been lying to him and everybody else, and he's in this like period of trying to figure shit out. And we learn there's a scene after he kills a shitload of people at the Pizzagate restaurant. He's on the run and he breaks into the house of this elderly black couple. And he's injured, and he at gunpoint makes the woman dress his wounds, and she's about to take his shirt off, and he like warns her, "Hey, I need to tell you that like I needed to tell you that like you're going to see some stuff on my body, and that's not me anymore." And she takes his shirt off, and there's like a huge swastika eagle tattoo on his chest. And it's just like, oh yeah, okay,
all right, it's what we thought about this guy, but I don't know. It's
Well, they circle that idea for a while. He's definitely it's interesting because this movie almost feels like an appeal to people who might be in a militia at the same time. Like it's painting them as silly, but not militias in general. And this character he's silly, but he's like you said, he's in a period of transition where like this reporter, it's basically this reporter who works at this Alex Jones place, goes to him and is like, I want you to come with me to Austin. I want protection. I'm going to see if this pizza place is actually like filled with lizard people who are eating kids and whatnot. And it always feels like she doesn't quite believe it either, but she's the weirdest character because like the whole time you kind of feel like she has an ulterior motive, but then she doesn't really.
I think she does.
I think that's part of the film that's meant to not be easily interpreted.
The idea is maybe she's ambitious as a reporter.
Yeah.
She wants to get her hooks into this idea. But the point is she's black. And so there's this moment where she looks at his van and is like, hey, what the fuck? Because he has Confederate plates. And I really like that part because he tries to defend it for a second.
Yeah.
And then they hard cut to him going, I'm sorry, all right, I'm sorry.
It's like, we'll just switch it out with the one in the front. He's like, the one in the front has a flag on it too. Listen, it came in a 2-pack.
So there's it's very interesting because he's clearly, he's in this place where like had this not happened to him in a few years, he might have gotten all the way
out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, you get the feeling he's not a Nazi anymore. We never see him do anything or say anything racist. And he spends like the whole movie like with a black woman in his car. And he's not, none of the things he does that are fucked up are that kind of fucked up. He's just always willing, always ready to shoot people. And he does it often. And he gets, I mean, I think kind of the journalist character, my guess would be, considering how deep this guy's knowledge of conspiracy culture is that she's kind of like a Laura Loomer or Millie Weaver stand-in, who are like two people who are women who are associated with Alex Jones, young women who like made documentaries that are kind of based on them exposing some aspect of the New World Order or something. And they're like both grifters, who have, like, in Loomer's case, gotten involved a couple of times with some really sketchy people. And at the end of the movie, her video of this guy's fucking massacre, like, goes super viral. And she gets a job with Alex Jones' character, who is, who becomes a millionaire herself as a result of, like, all of the additional attention on them after this. Like, the show ends with the worst people in the movie. And it's making a clear thing about, like the overall premise is that, like, this guy is like a fucked up, like very confused person who could have gone a number of different ways with his life, but had these conspiracy people had their hooks in him and he had a bunch of guns. And so it went a very specific, very bad way. And he's certainly not a hero, but the villain is the people dishing out the conspiracy theories, and making money on it. Yeah,
I think the two, we're going to get to the rest of the plot, I swear. But I feel like, again, it's saying a lot of surprisingly complicated things about conspiracy culture, but it seems like the firmest argument the film is making is about the predatory nature of this industry.
Yes.
And also about how anything, any event, anything that happens can be twisted to fit that narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the 3-tier system where, like, you see with the anti-vax stuff, where you have like the politicians who like to entertain the anti-vax stuff, but are clearly vaccinated. Then you have the media level of people who are saying the anti-vax stuff, but are vaccinated.
Yeah.
Like they're, and then you have the true believers under that. And those people are very difficult to deal with, but they're also, they're victims in a lot of ways. And that seems to be what they're talking about, is this relationship between the media and the true believers. Yeah. Because there's a part, near the end where this woman, this Alex Jones woman, is held at gunpoint and
on TV.
And he's like, tell them there's no lizard people, because there isn't. And
that's the thing he believes. Like, it's funny that he doesn't believe Pizzagate is real, but he does believe that they're lizard people.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, and he's realizing, he says, like, are there even lizard people? Were you right about that?
Yeah.
And she's at gunpoint, and as he's like, tell them, the producer is saying, hey, remember your contract to her.
Yeah. Remember this business you've built.
Yeah, they never explicitly say it, but it's obvious that they're grifters, that they know exactly. They're not true believers. They're taking advantage of this people, and in what she thinks might be her dying breath, she doesn't confess.
Yeah.
She says, no, there are lizard people.
She says he's a deep state assassin.
Yeah.
Is what she says.
Which is perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. It is really good. And it's really, from a storytelling standpoint, such a an interesting and effortful idea to be like, I'm going to have our protagonist be this former Nazi militia conspiracy weirdo, and his arc is going to be that while he is massacring people, he gets unpilled and realizes that all of this stuff is a lie. Like, that's a fun and very satisfying character arc to watch.
Because they do a situation where you always feel like he's doomed. He always feels doomed. And you don't like him. Again, he's the protagonist.
He is not likable.
He's not the hero, but you are sad.
He's somewhat sympathetic.
He's a little endearing. He is sympathetic.
Yeah.
He's not like a guy you're cheering for, but he's a guy he's very pitiable.
Yeah, again, I think they designed him really well as like he has reformed from a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
He's in a place where you can kind of root for him to continue that path.
Yeah. He's never cruel, and he's never like, aside from constantly killing people, which is always in immediate self-defense, although he does start the situation, like he's never like it's messy, right?
Yeah,
like, again,
exactly.
Yeah.
But they're creating a system where he seems like it's not a situation where you're like, oh, he should just die, because it really does feel like he has a shot at being a human being. Yeah. And that's where the tragedy comes, is that it's this person kind of coming out from that, and then I mean, people know there's spoilers. He ultimately gets shot
by Alex Jones.
By Alex Jones.
Yeah, by Terry Lee. Yep.
Because everybody's packing.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Because again, almost every character we meet in this movie has a gun on them.
Yeah.
And pulls it.
Which
is very Texas.
Oh yeah. You definitely feel bad for him, because I think that's why they added the part where he came straight from Waco, because like the Koresh stuff, because it's like, oh, he never had a chance.
Yeah.
He was born into this.
Yeah.
And this
is him like finally thinking for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In his 20s.
It also puts the idea in your mind early on about twisting narratives. Because and even when they drop that cinder block of like, you're David Koresh's kid, she says it to him by saying, yeah, you know, your dad was that guy who set the whole compound on fire. And it's like, you know, watching the thing, I was like, hang on. And then of course, like two sentences later, she's like, of course could have been the FBI or the ATF that set the thing on fire, but who knows?
Which it was.
Of course, it was.
Which it absolutely was.
It absolutely was. But like the idea of like the narrative can be twisted to fit, the events can be twisted to fit any narrative. And it puts that idea in your head early on about the relationship between the conspiracy culture and the media and the way that, Yeah,
and she says to him also, like, you know, they raided your dad because there was claims that he was abusing young women, and like, why aren't they interested in this pizza place with the same allegations? And it sounds like it makes sense.
You're like,
but
okay,
of course
I get why this dude listens to that argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good twisting of logic where it's like, well, yeah, obviously it's a pizza place.
I mean, there's a number of reasons why, including the fact that children and women were being abused at the Bridge Davidian compound.
Right. And whereas Pizzagate is a totally unsubstantiated,
but
wild
if you're
ass
David
theory.
Koresh's fucking kid living in what is obviously a stolen van, you get it makes sense. Like the logic in the moment is like, I get why he listens to this.
Right. And it's just a good example of how you can, create these like, oh yeah, why isn't it like that? And you can like kind of twist logic to make something seem credible or mysterious.
There's also an element of how that, I mean, the culture cannibalizing itself.
Yeah.
You know, because as soon as, like, obviously as soon as he storms in, we already talked about where Terry Lee just says he's a deep state assassin. But then also like his van that Robert just mentioned, he lives in his van. It's like loaded with guns and all this. He
has to hotwire it to turn it on.
Yeah. But like, he's like living the lifestyle of a militia guy that all these his fellow militiamen and like the Terry Lee character and everything are like, you know, cheering on as like, oh, he's a real American, salt of the earth. Like he's proud of his Second Amendment rights, et cetera, et cetera. But as soon as, of course, they find his van, it just becomes all the stuff that they're just immediately able to use against him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
he's a white nationalist. And like,
exactly. Yeah. So it's
one of the other things I do like about this is we're in this situation now where people keep being like different attacks, like the one at the school, which you could kind of call far right, that people try to people want it to be as simple as a white nationalist. Like what happened without going into it, like that school shooting is like way weirder shit. It's like really fucking weird, like Telegram shit is there's other way. Like it's a weird internet subculture, and it's much more complicated than white nationalists. And that's the case with this guy. Like the things that set him into motion to shoot people is like this mix of a bunch of different, very complicated cultural factors that get wound up in a dude who was on the edge of society to kind of start.
Right. And I think the movie does a good job at that, because it's not like excusing it. It's not being like, oh, you see, the media makes them out to be white nationalists, but they're not. Yeah. There's flavors
he had a
of white.
He had a swastika on his heart.
And like the other militia people, and like there's definitely white nationalists in the group.
It's just that to meaningfully understand why this happened, you need to know more than that. And that's what I like about this. Is
he's not a two-dimensional character.
Yeah.
Like, and again, part of that is the storytelling, where they knew, like, we can't make this guy just a Nazi, because then no one's going to want to watch the movie.
For sure.
Like, you need a character. They do a good job where they, you got these two characters, and I think it's part of why her character, her name's Karen, why her motivations are so hard to pin down at first. Because for a while I thought, like, oh, is she on the inside? Is she trying to... And, like, you can't quite tell what she wants, but you like her, and, like... She seems nice enough, and that's part of the twist, is at the end it's like she's kind of just she's definitely
she might be a sociopath.
Yeah.
But like for that ride, she's there to balance him out.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of the buddy comedy aspect between them. And so like even though he's a piece of shit, she doesn't seem like one. And so you are rooting for them, and you want to see what's going to happen throughout the movie, and they do a very good job with that, considering where they're coming from.
Yeah. One of the things that's neat about this, so apparently I read this somewhere, that the where they shoot the Terry Lee show is the public access studio in Austin where Alex Jones started off. Like it actually is that, which number one is affordable, and it's what this movie does really well is they keep making choices that are like, that's a choice made for the budget, and they also, it works with the movie. Like the militia in this is like a shit militia. They don't have like body armor, they don't have AR-15s, they've got like shit guns, like they're wearing like fucking camo and street clothes, like they're like broke, and obviously that's cheaper to shoot, but also like it works because they're not competent, like they're not scary, they're like they're just a bunch of dumb people who don't have a lot of money but do have a bunch of guns.
The idea is
which makes them scary
makes them scary. Yeah.
But
they're not scary in like they're not like in camo and like with like headphones and like talking on like a comm line, and they're not like the high end militia. Like
they're not John Wick. They're toddlers with shotguns. Is why they're scary.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
It seems like our main character is like a step above. His name's Duncan Plump, by the way. I feel like
Duncan
that
Plump.
needs to be mentioned.
Incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And then there's the militia leader, the old man, who's like, clearly this has gotten away from him.
Yeah,
like,
he's clearly been in a militia since the 90s. Yeah. When it was all about getting ready for like, I don't know, earthquakes or some shit. And now it's just like, people are clearly, everybody's fighting for the throne. Yeah.
That's sort of the villain is Philip.
Who's trying to take over the militia.
Yeah, and he almost goes with the reporter.
And
and he causes the massacre.
Yeah.
Also, that should be noted.
2 massacres.
Two massacres. That's part of the thing is he's following them as they go to this pizza place, and then they go in, and he follows behind, and he's the one who starts shooting.
And it's also unclear, like, our guy, the protagonist, might have started shooting if Philip hadn't been there, right?
Yeah.
Like, we really don't know. Because the people in the pizza restaurant, the crew cleaning up, have a gun, and, like, they pull it. And it's, again, it's this like, very smart thing of, like, making a very good point about that's, like, anti-gun and about gun control that doesn't rely on, like, being heavy-handed. It's just pointing out, like, yes, all of these people are like high-strung and deeply marginalized by society, and the fact that they all have guns means that people keep getting shot.
Right?
And
it's the escalation of force, right? It's a thing you definitely talked about with all the Portland stuff last year. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, when do the protests get violent? When the cops show up.
Yeah,
Right.
when people start using weapons on each other.
Right. And if it's a lot of people, on edge who all have firearms, that shit's gonna happen.
Yeah. And it's not. There's no need to stop the movie for like a statement about gun control. You get the message by just watching. Oh, it seems like the fact that everyone has a gun and someone always pulls it means that a lot of people die. Huh?
Right.
Yeah. I think, in fact, I think except for the first time when it's with the protesters in the parking lot, but I think every time a gun is pulled in this movie, somebody gets killed.
And that's, there's another point there. It's like the reason no one dies when he pulls a gun on the protesters is the protesters don't pull back. There's no escalation. Like they de-escalate him. Like there's a very like you see an effort from the protesters to de-escalate the situation and give him a way to get out, and he gets out and nobody gets killed.
Right.
But the thing that sorry, Dave, the thing that I like about that is that they make the protesters look like wieners. Like they don't make it look like they're being like saintly or correct or anything. They make them look like buffoons when they do it. But it's one of the things I really like about the movie.
Yeah, that's the thing they're planting is everybody else is so scared of being a victim.
Yeah.
And that fear of victimhood results in these situations as well. So, like, having the protesters at the beginning sort of just are resigned to being the victim of that situation. And they're ultimately the smartest people.
Yeah.
In terms of,
the only
dealing
people
with
who do
someone
not
with a gun.
get it shot.
Yeah.
No, it's good. And I also, there's also really good, we'll talk about this when we finally do our prospect review, but I really appreciate when directors and writers are smart about how they use firearms in movies, and you learn about the characters through how they handle their guns, and more than like a John Wick where like, yeah, he's real good at like moving fast and killing people.
Right.
There's one of the things they establish with Philip, the bad militia guy, every time he goes into a clearly dangerous situation where he plans to shoot someone, he doesn't just have to draw, he has to draw and chamber around in his gun. If you are carrying a handgun for self-defense and you actually like are concerned that you may need to use a gun, you would never do that because the gun would have a round in the chamber. That is how most people who carry a gun. If you actually think you might get into a gunfight, it is idiotic to not have a round chambered because that is a delay. He gets shot because he's chambering around in his gun and the other guy is ready. And it's kind of making this point that like Philip really wants to control this militia. He likes using a gun as a prop and like a statement of power, but he's not actually prepared to use his guns. They're an accoutrement to him. He's dressing up with them. Whereas our protagonist is always prepared to use his guns. And it's just good character development because you see Philip the first time he racks his slide, it's before he goes into the pizza restaurant. And the next time he draws a gun, he gets shot because he doesn't have a round chambered. And it's just like, oh, he thought that through. Like it
that's a great detail. I really like that.
Yeah.
Because it does say a lot about
characters.
Yeah.
And their relationship to guns.
Right. Is whether or not it's like it's almost like a style statement.
Yeah, I think
as opposed to an actual function.
I think it's also how he loses the paintball fight, right? Because he hops over the log and he's carrying this huge tub of extra paintball ammo that cracks open and spills.
Yeah.
So he has to like hastily try to pick it back up, and then of course he gets shot while that's happening.
Yeah.
Because it's like he decided to have a huge old fucking bandolier of paintballs. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good. I don't know.
Yeah, everything's just real competent, and it does not feel like it's, they make some choices like the actual Pizzagate massacre you don't see. Like they do like text on screen to be like, a bunch of people got shot, like, or 3 minutes later or something like that. And he's like running out after the gunfight.
It's part of that weird balance because the aftermath is treated comedically. Because what is the cook's name?
Rico is the manager's name.
Manager comes out covered in knives, stabbed.
That's the most grindhouse moment of the movie.
Yeah. And then Rico is a monster. There's a Kevin Smith reference, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Well, Rico says, I'm not even supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the Clerks reference, I think. And then they're like struggling with Duncan with the shotgun. It like pans away, blood goes back to Duncan, and he's like shell shocked, and he has a single ear on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's such a weird way to treat that, but it is what you're saying, which is that everybody with a gun is almost treated like, well, this is just the violence that they're all bringing on themselves. So we're gonna kind of treat it in an almost like a fun way. Like, it's surprisingly like comedic.
Yeah,
there's violence.
Beats, but that not in the militia shootout, really.
No, not in that.
That's nasty.
And not in the end.
Yeah,
I think the tone throughout was kind of like it's a satire, and they toe the line of being silly a lot, and I think that's just so that they can get away with the militia massacre and then the ending in the TV studio, which are both very, very serious.
It's very interesting the way they do all that stuff, because like the massacre itself that you expect to be this really dark thing, like a mass shooting, is actually, it's a shoot off. It's two groups shooting at each other is what we learn. And so I don't know, it's interesting to me because I think it does work ultimately. And so like it's a bold move. It could have easily not worked. I think it could have come off as like too crass, and I don't think it did at all.
No, I don't think it did. And I think that one of the things I really liked about this was that the big, oh shit, what was I gonna say? Sorry.
No, take your time, man.
Yeah, we got time. I don't know, militia, pizza. I do want to note, while you're trying to think of that, the pizza place itself, they do a thing where their logo is an eye.
Yeah,
and so
it's like an Illuminati looking eye.
Seeing is believing.
It's that thing where they clearly want the audience to feel like, oh,
maybe there is. Yeah.
And that's part of the point, which is like, no, of course there isn't, you idiots. Like, of course there fucking isn't. But like all these little things, it's like, oh, it could be. And it's like, no. It's just stuff. It's just random symbols. That's it.
Yeah. It's like, so I remember what I was going to say.
Yeah.
One of the things I appreciate about this is that most of the time when there is a satire that is in this world, it's either making fun of like modern Nazis or militia types or conspiracy people. It inadvertently makes them look really cool or makes something look, it's kind of like Wolfenstein, which is thoroughly anti-Nazi, making the Nazi soldiers look awesome. And so then on like Nazi Telegram, you see a bunch of like Nazis sharing images of like Nazis in Wolfenstein because they look cool and it makes them feel cool. Like, even though they're the bad guys in that, they think it looks like they adopt that imagery for themselves. There's not a scene in this that makes anybody look cool. Like, nobody's handsome. Like, the fucking our protagonist, like, nobody like looks good. Nobody's having a good time. Nobody looks cool. Nobody's weapons are very cool. Like, they're very functional guns. There's not a lot of like super modern firearms or anything like that. Like, he's just like, everyone is like very grounded and sad, and I appreciate that from a not providing fuel to the people that you're commenting on kind of move. It's a very responsible satire, I think. Yeah,
the only character who's somewhat cool is Duncan because he's competent with guns, and they set that up so that he can have this shoot. Like, they do the thing where he's good at guns and the rest of the militia are terrible with guns. Yeah. And that mixture makes it so that he can win in a shootout against most of them at once, realistically enough, where it's like, you're like, yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
I also think you're right. It doesn't make them look cool, but like we're saying, it doesn't immediately mock them. And I feel like there's like potential for people who are in this world seeing this movie.
Yes.
Not immediately picking up on what the movie is doing. Of being like, oh, okay, I'll watch this. And like making it to the point of the movie, which is you are being manipulated.
I think, that's the ultimate message of the movie, and I think that's, in addition to nobody would be able to stomach the movie if the protagonist was a full-blown Nazi. But I think, like, the other aspect of that is because I think part of this movie's message is to people who are mired in militia conspiracy culture, and be like, look, this is, like, you're being used by these people.
Right.
Like, this is all a bad faith grift, and you are being used by this machine.
And a lot of you can die, and a lot of other people can die because of this.
And they won't say good things about you after you're dead.
Yeah. But it also just, like, the more of you that die as a result of this, the better the people feeding that culture do. Like, the more money they make.
Exactly,
Yeah. We probably talk about that end scene where she's being interviewed by that guy who just, as soon as you see the end, it's like, I think it's supposed to be like she's on some 60-minute style show or something. But he also kind of looks like he might be a cop, like, but not really.
He bookends the movie.
Yeah. His face, you can just tell, like, well, that guy's going to be a lizard.
Yeah, he looks like
that guy's going to be a lizard person for sure.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as he's like questioning her about how much money she made from the video of this massacre when it went viral, he transform briefly. There's like a second where she sees him as a lizard person, and then he goes back to normal. And I think like the clear message is that kind of like how previous to this, her boss, Lady Alex Jones, had a gun to her and had to say like, yes, all of this is true. All of this is like, I won't like, even at the thought of my own death, I will not do anything but embrace the reality of this. And I think I think what's happening in that scene is her like doing that in her own head.
Yes.
Like, accepting like the reality of the lizard people, because she has to in order to make this money. She has to treat it as it does have to be like total. You have to give yourself to that kind of thing if you're going to profit from it, as Alex Jones has.
Yeah. Right, because otherwise she can't sleep at night. And so, she's basically, what's happening is this reporter is putting her up against a wall, essentially exposing her in that moment as being a hypocrite. So obviously he's a lizard person. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's, you have to make that conclusion. Otherwise you have to look at yourself in the mirror and realize what you are. Which is, it's a great ending for this.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah. I was watching it with Marina, and she flat out shrieked when that lizard, because it's like a jump scare. It's very
it's
abrupt.
a good jump scare too. It's good makeup.
It's a good makeup. Yeah.
Yeah, and they also, just for like how good they did on such a low budget, all of the violence is pretty well done. When the guy has the knife sticking out of him, it's a little bit like,
of course, yeah.
But it looks like they used squibs. If not, then their CGI was good. Like the blood, there's like blood and stuff. It doesn't look cheap. The gunfights don't look practical. Like shitty movie gunfights. Like it looks pretty right. He really this director, like for the what like about the cheapest you can make a movie.
Yeah.
You don't notice it. Yeah.
Yeah. The connection to Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Leads me to suspect Robert Rodriguez is very good at low budget filmmaking. Yeah. So I'm imagining that he learned a lot from him. Yeah. And it does look pretty practical. It also there's a certain pacing to the gunfights, and again, the action isn't John Wick. There's a couple like fast. And it's like there's a couple like clever things that happen, but for the most part it's grounded. It's just people pointing guns at each other, and then someone fires first. The only like cool thing he does is he fires through the wall that one time.
Oh yeah, he does,
and that's it.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like it's slower paced. It's not. See, that's the thing, is I wouldn't call it action. I would call it violence.
It's violence.
Yeah.
It is not action. Like, you don't feel cool or hyped about any of the violence. It's just kind of unsettling, which is good. It's all really well done. And none of the unsettling stuff is enough. Like, you're not bummed out at the end of it. Like I immediately texted Dave about it as soon as I finished it, because I found it was very good. Yeah. I like the shit out of this movie. I love seeing a director just do a cool thing because they thought it was a good idea. I think it might be one of my favorite movies of the Trump era.
Honestly, this is a movie I never would have stopped and watched, and it's a movie that like continued to pleasantly surprise me, like every single scene that happened. I was like, this is pretty good.
This guy really thought this shit through.
Yeah.
I have generally the same view. I will say it was a little too real for me, if that makes sense.
Very fucking real.
And so like as a movie, I'm so glad it exists, for all the reasons we're saying. I enjoyed watching it, but it definitely bummed me out. And so like, it's not a feel good movie for people out there.
No.
I think it's important for people to watch.
I think it has
certain people.
100%, because it does the what South Park did when it did its Scientology and its Mormonism episodes, where it like doesn't embellish it at all. It's just like, this is literally what Pizzagate is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, this is literally what the culture is. This is just the things that they are saying.
Mm-hmm.
That is,
yeah,
that is a big part of it. Is that you if you're like us, you might be like, well, I don't need to see that. I don't need that debunked for me. It's not even about that. It's just sort of it sums up the sadness of it all in a really good way.
Yeah.
Where like, even though it's like kind of a zany comedy, or a dark comedy.
Dark, yeah, I would say dark rather than zany.
There's empathy here. There's an empathy and a compassion in talking about it. And that's what makes it a bummer, because it's a tragedy.
It would be very easy, especially if this were done by someone who I think were more like traditionally coming at it from like a political liberal perspective, for this to be dismissive. And it simultaneously does not give any credence to this stuff, but without being dismissive of it. There's a gravity to it, because it is important to understand this stuff, and laughing at it is not understanding it. Yeah,
exactly. Like, it's the Pizzagate. It's the conspiracy is ridiculous, but these people, this culture, this dramatic effect it has on them is very, very real. So yeah, like, dismissing it is super unhelpful. That's why, like, fucking the upcoming Adam McKay movie, Don't Look Up, is like,
I'm dreading that.
Yeah,
it seems like a horrible.
Right? Like, that's that's the way to do this.
Two-dimensional stuff.
Exactly. That's the way to be dismissive and just like preaching to your own. It's like, that's like the kind of satire that's just like blowing yourself and is like unhelpful.
I think that's also part of why this is a comedy, is that the guy who plays Duncan Plump, I don't remember his name. It's comedic character. He's a fool, but then he does these shifts where you realize how tragic he is and how much help he needs, and so it is drawing people in with that promise of like, we're making fun of him. It's fun, but then it is more complex than that. It doesn't make them these two-dimensional characters, and so again, very fine line they're walking throughout this movie.
It's hard to do.
Yeah,
like,
I think they did it.
I think so, and I think if like this director, if you were to say, we want to make a movie with the broad premise of Don't Look Up, and we'll give it to you, I suspect the tact he would have taken, and I think the tact that would have made an interesting movie, is you like, okay, there's this like, number one, you have the tone be perfectly Aaron Sorkin, and there's a meteor that's going to hit the Earth, and it's all of these well-meaning politicians whose ideas are probably in line with the people watching it, working out a way to hide this from people for reasons that seem very reasonable, and ultimately they get everybody killed, and it's a horrible disaster. And like, but the entire time you're actually like empathizing, and you understand like, oh well, I guess that makes sense, and like that's an inspiring way to phrase it, and then they get everybody killed, and then it's like, okay, well maybe think about the political systems that you trust your life to, and the actual competence of the people in them, and as opposed to just like LOL right wingers. It's
about asking why.
Yeah,
it's about asking, why do these people believe these things? The movie I recommended to you, Robert, Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which is another militia movie, it explores it less, but by the end you do get that feeling of like, yeah, that is why they do this, isn't it? Like, there's that aspect to it where it's like, you have to, you can't be like, they're dummies. It's like, well, they come from somewhere. Yeah. You know, a lot of these people might be vets who were fucked over by the government. You know, it's not like the government hadn't fucked over a lot of people. And that's sort of the Waco thing too in this.
Yeah.
And so it is, you do have to like point out when you're discussing this stuff of like, we need to know why these people believe what they believe, why they're in this place in life.
And to be clear, it's not about like feeling, I don't know, it's not necessarily about like feeling sorry for them or being like, we need to understand these people. It's like, no, but it is important to understand why this is happening.
Yeah. And that's part of what I think was so smart about his, because I think that, again, the slightly worse version of this by a less intelligent person, Duncan would have been a vet. He would have been an Iraq war vet. And then like, one sec. Shit, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not cutting this. Robert's headphones fell
Robert's
off.
headphones flew off his head. I'm
not cutting anything. I
think in the slightly less good version of this, they would have just been like, he was a vet, and like that's why he's fucked up, and that's why he doesn't trust the system, and like that's also why he's good at guns. But it's just so much more entertaining, while still in I think a more artful way setting up the aspect of its character. Like, he's David Koresh's kid. That's why he doesn't trust the government. That's why he believes in all of this.
It's
and you assume David Koresh's kid probably gets really into guns.
Yeah. it's a hilariously unique thing to do for the character.
Like, well, that was creative. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is. Yeah, it is. Again, it's not a problem with this movie, but it is. They gave him such a unique backstory that it might be easy to forget that, like, no, there's a ton of backstories that can make a person like this.
Yeah, a lot of things could make a dude, which is also like the other militia guy could very well have done a number of the things that he did, just would be less competent. It's fucking the Pizzagate Massacre. Yeah. Check it out. It's pretty good.
Check it out. All right, my biggest criticism of this movie, and I don't know how they can avoid this, is its title. Because the title is repellent. It's repellent.
I wonder how much that's going to hurt them. I don't know what else you title it, but I did not expect this to be the movie that I watched with that title.
Yeah, for sure.
I was kind of expecting it to be like Iron Sky, and I would turn it off 15 minutes in.
I still have never attempted to watch that.
Yeah, it's one of those movies you put on thinking this might be amusing, and then no, it's not.
That's the interesting thing about this movie is, the marketing, it's the Pizzagate Massacre, it's the fucking all-seeing eye, like the Illuminati eye pyramid with a lizard person's face behind it in this grindhouse style, and the tagline is the most bizarre crime in American history that never happened. And I honestly think that the people who are like, oh, hell yeah, and click on that are going to be so bummed.
Which maybe that's the point, that you want to get a bunch of people who think like this stuff's rad to watch this movie and maybe think about stuff. Like, if that's honestly what the director was going for, I don't know that it worked, but props to him.
Yeah. But like on IMDb, this has a 4.2 out of 10. And I think it's because of that. That's
unfair. Yeah.
I think I read something that there was like a kind of a, like this guy got death threats and like, there's an online response to it, and it's because it's politicized. Yeah.
Well, obviously. I mean,
of course it is. All art is political. Get that out of your head right now.
Well, but this is like, very political.
It is extremely political, but again, we keep saying this, like, not in the way that usually means. Usually that means like Saturday Night Live Alec Baldwin sketch.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, it's not that kind of political.
I would argue, it's a difference between, I would argue that in 20 years from now, this movie will still be a movie. If that makes sense. It won't be something that's so out of its time that people won't be able to enjoy it.
I think
that's key, I think.
Yeah, 20 years from now, this will be a good movie to show a 20-year-old if they're like, why did shit get so wild back in the 2020s? Like, why did things get so fucked up? Well, let's watch this movie, and you can ask some questions, because this is a pretty good picture of like the social trends that fucked a lot of stuff up. Right.
You show them the movie and be like, so that times like 100. Like, there's a lot of these people.
That, but the president.
That, but the president.
Well, shit. Any other final thoughts about this? I feel like I
think we nailed it. I think we
nailed it. Yeah.
We're so good at this.
This shit's dope as hell. Watch it. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say watch it. Just be prepared for the fact that it's a bummer.
Yeah.
Like, that's
bleak
all.
And violent, for sure.
Watch it early. Don't watch it like before bed. Watch it early in the day where you can then like put on some bullshit that'll make you feel better. That's all.
Yeah.
Robert, thank you so much for bringing this to us.
Yeah. Thank you for agreeing on like a 2-day notice. Like, you guys want to record a podcast about this weird Pizzagate movie?
No, literally any time you have.
I was going to say we get to chat with you about stuff. That's great.
Well, maybe next time we'll finally do Churchill: The Hollywood Years.
Oh, Christ.
The movie where Christian Slater plays Winston Churchill.
Oh, I know.
I'm just telling the audience.
We watched it. Yeah,
we did.
I definitely showed you guys that movie.
You definitely made us watch that.
Nev Campbell and Christian Slater as Winston Churchill and the Princess of England. And the current Queen of England is Nev Campbell. Who fucks with Christian Slater? Great movie.
That is one of the most fascinating fucking movies, because it's a movie that it feels like it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
like every time joke, I'm like surely that movie doesn't exist. Yeah,
no, like it sure does.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what it is.
It
but,
super exists.
It definitely exists, as does this movie, which I recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, do you wanna plug some stuff? Where can we get more Robert?
If you type my name and podcast into a search engine, you'll find a bunch of shit. The only thing I really want to plug is my novel After the Revolution is going to be up for pre-sale at AK Press. I think you can pre-order it now. And it'll be out early next year. So go check out AK Press After the Revolution. You can find some shit. There'll be signed copies. Check it out.
Cool.
I fucking love AK Press. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. They do
Sorry,
great shit.
when I was a little dirtbag punk, I used to get shirts from them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. That's great.
Yeah, they're doing fiction imprints now. They also published Margaret Killjoy's A Country of Ghosts, which is awesome. Really good
nice. All right, yeah, people check that shit out.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I'll tell people quick that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. You go on there, you pay $5 a month, you get a bunch of exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our new one, Spiel Boys.
Woo!
Yeah, you can check that out. We watch movies with our patrons every Friday night as well.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff on there.
Yeah. So put your peepers on it. We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com. You can find a link to our Teespring store. We have cool original artwork and designs. You can get in all kinds of stuff like t-shirts, masks, mugs, stickers, posters. Check that shit out.
Yeah.
Do
and
it.
Go on AK Press. Man, I had an Animal Liberation Front shirt from this place.
Yeah, sounds
man.
about right.